Hi everyone, before I begin, I'd like to share a story that really inspired me this year. So, some time ago, a 3-year-old in Austria fell into an icy fish pond, and she remained under the surface for 30 minutes. This was terrible, and nobody found her until half an hour later when her parents pulled her out. An emergency doctor on the phone told them to start CPR, which they did, and she had absolutely no sign of life in her. Her temperature was 68 degrees, she had no pulse, her pupils were dilated, and they weren't responding to light, which is an indicator that the brain isn't working anymore. 8 minutes later, the emergency team came, and the EMTs continued to give her CPR, and they took her away in a helicopter, and they rushed her immediately to the operating room once they got there, where the surgical team put her on a heart-lung bypass system. She was lifeless for an hour and a half until they got the lines hooked up to her for her IVs. 22 hours later, after the incident happened, her temperature had rose 10 degrees and her heart started beating again. And after 6 more hours, her temperature was back up to 98.6 degrees, which is completely normal. She was put on an artificial lung system known as ECMO, and the surgical team power sawed her chest open to sew lines from the ECMO unit to her heart to get efficient air transportation to the heart and aorta. After this, she was put in intensive care with her heart still open with plastic foil around her chest. 2 days later, all of her organs started working again except for her brain, so they drilled holes into her skull and put a probe to monitor her cerebral pressure, and they monitored it using medicine and fluids. She was comatose for more than a week after this, but eventually, 2 weeks later, she went home with only a partially paralyzed right leg and left arm and speech problems. By the time she was 5 years old, she was completely back to normal again after really intensive therapy. So it's stories like this that make me want to pursue the medical field, because one day I want to be able to change someone's life in the way that the surgical team changed this little girl's life. My name is Shaina Patel, and this year I'm studying general surgery. My quote for the year is, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it's the courage to continue that counts," by Winston Churchill. This has really been a good quote for me this year because it's really inspired me to just keep on going no matter what comes in the way. A little bit about me. I'm 16 years old. I have a mom, a dad, and an older brother that's in college. I've always wanted to be a doctor ever since I was 5 years old because I've always wanted to just help people. This year I'm in HOSA, which is basically a club for aspiring medical kids in which I'm the president. I'm also in a program called Health Science 2 in which I get clinical shifts for, so I'm actually a certified nurse aide through that class, and I've gotten shifts on every floor you could think of, ER, OR, ICU, CCU, just everything. So it's really given me good experience along with my ISM experience. And I'm really involved with school activities along with HOSA. I'm also in student council and NHS, and I try to participate in whatever I can outside of school. I chose ISM because I knew that it would be a good class to push me out of my comfort zone. So I knew that I definitely wanted to start shadowing and do as much as I could to get involved in the medical field, but there's not as much that you can do while you're just in high school, because there is a problem that you need to be certified and know how to take care of people. So I knew that this class would be a good way for me to get involved and do whatever I could at this age. And I'd heard so many good things about the ISM program, and after watching a past ISM student's presentation last year, Bree Heath, I was really inspired to go and take things into my own hands and start my ISM journey. So I chose general surgery because for a long time I wanted to pursue pediatrics, and then I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and last year I took anatomy and physiology, and I found that I really liked it and I was good at it, and it was just the most interesting thing in the whole world to me. So I thought that this field would be the most close thing to anatomy and physiology that there was. So going into it, I had no idea what specialty I wanted to pursue in surgery, so I thought I would just start with general and interview around with people of different specialties to see if I really took to one more than the other. My mission statement is to broaden my knowledge in the field of general surgery. It's kind of long, so I won't read it all, but basically my goal for this year was to be prepared for the road ahead of me because it is long, and I wanted to get as much experience as I could and see as much as I could while I'm still in high school. So I had a lot of interviews because I tried to get to people, like one person of each specialty, so I could really see and learn about each different field and see if I liked one more than the other. So I probably had about around 10 interviews total. Basically, one thing that they all told me was about their paths after high school. They all went to undergrad and went to med school and did their residency, and a lot of them did a fellowship after that, so it was definitely a long road coming here. They all told me not to get discouraged, and they all told me about their weekly tasks. And from a lot of them, I got more contacts, which is the thing that we learn here in ISM. We learn how to network and communicate in the professional world. So my first interview was with Dr. Jeff Engebaldo. He's a plastic surgeon at Renaissance Plastic Surgery. He taught me a lot about confidence and that you need to have it to be a good surgeon. He told me that when everyone starts out in residency, nobody's perfect, everybody has so much to learn. So as you get more and more experience, you really build up your skill and you get better at what you do. My next interview is with Dr. Sheetal Patel. She's a general surgeon at the Medical Center of Plano. She does minimally invasive and bariatric surgery and a lot of weight loss surgery. And she taught me about basically how everything, especially in Frisco, is very subspecialized, especially in general surgery, because we're such an urban city and we have so many resources. People tend to subspecialize to really perfect what they do. She was a great candidate, and she also taught me that you can be a woman and be a surgeon at the same time, which a lot of people don't think is true, but it's definitely true. She was an amazing person, but this also made me realize that I want to see more variety rather than just be limited to 2 or 3 types of surgery every single week. My next interview was with Dr. Keith Cavanis, who is a surgical oncologist at the Baylor Medical Center. He taught me a lot about how different environments impact what you do. So basically he told me that if you're in a more rural environment, you'll get more variety in your job as a surgeon. But if you're in a more urban society like Frisco itself, everything is very subspecialized again, and you're more, not limited, but advanced in one certain area. My next interview is with Dr. F. Allen Barber, who's an orthopedic surgeon at Plano Orthopedic Sports Medicine. He taught me that school is very important in the process of becoming a doctor because you do have so many exams, and it is over 8 years of schooling because you do have to do your undergraduate degree and then your medical degree. So he told me I just need to stay centered with it, and you also have to keep up in the world of medicine because things are constantly changing, and some people think that once you're a doctor you don't have to keep up and read articles and do research, but it's very untrue, because you do have to keep up with things, because if you don't stay up to date with all the changes that are happening, especially with all the new technology that we're getting in these days, you will fall behind. My next interview was with Dr. Kim Rickert. This was definitely an interview that personally impacted me because it was very inspirational to hear her talk about her life journey. She's a neurosurgeon, a vascular neurosurgeon actually, at Parkland Hospital. Showed me that hard work really pays off because when she was actually my age in high school, she had a child and completed high school, and nobody thought she would come out on top. And then immediately after high school, she went to college and did her undergraduate degree and then became a teacher. So she taught for a few years, and then eventually she decided to pursue a different job. So she got a job in a biology lab, and this kind of prompted her to get closer to neurology, and she really began to like it. So she decided to go to med school after that and also get her PhD at the same time. So that was something huge, seeing that someone who had a child in high school could do this, because by the time she was in med school, her kid was already a teenager. So by the time she was in residency, her kid didn't need her for every little thing, but she's now the chief of neurosurgery at Parkland Hospital. So it was definitely a great inspiration to see such an amazing woman come out from such an early start to motherhood to come to this position now. So she was definitely one of my favorite people that I interviewed. My next interview was over the phone with Dr. Peter Kim, who is a transplant surgeon at Baylor Medical Center. Dr. Keith Cavanis, who I mentioned earlier, actually recommended that he contacted me, which was very nice of him. The phone interview actually went really well. He told me that you have to take risks in your field, and although you have to stay safe, you can't be afraid to try new things. And my last interview was with Dr. Robert Minquez, who ended up becoming my mentor. He's a general pediatric surgeon at Children's Medical Center in Plano, and he taught me a lot about the variety in pediatrics, whereas in general surgery for adults, everything tends to be much more subspecialized. In kids, you have a bigger variety because you do have congenital defects, which are defects that kids acquire from birth. You do have all the other general stuff, and he also does clinical stuff too. So it was a really good mix, and he was very kind. So you could tell that he was a really good teacher just by talking to him, so this made me definitely want to choose him as a mentor. So my initial research was kind of scattered because I honestly didn't know where to begin because there's so much to look at for surgery. I had no idea where to start. So I started with common surgical procedures, everything from just knowing how to diagnose a patient to doing a biopsy to doing a general surgery. Then I went on to look at gastrointestinal tumors, which just taught me a little bit more about surgical oncology. And it was definitely it definitely impacted me to see all these articles and stuff because all these case studies were so long, and it also taught me that if I want to pursue research at the same time, it's a very long road, but it's definitely something that I would want to try out sometime in the future. My next research assessment was over robotic-assisted surgery. So basically, this is an alternative to laparoscopic surgery, which involves doing everything from inside the body. Robotic-assisted surgery is a little bit more flexible because while laparoscopic surgery is kind of like going in the body with chopsticks, with robotic-assisted surgery, these chopsticks have wrists and arms so they can move more freely. So that was very interesting for me to hear about that, and also Dr. Patel had some experience with it, so she told me a little bit about that too. And also Dr. Cavanes did too, so it was really cool to hear about that kind of stuff. Then later in ISM, we took a trip to UNT for the day, and we attended 2 classes. So the first class I attended was play therapy. This actually kind of helped me get more into pediatrics because they talked about how if kids can do something by themselves, they should be encouraged to do it, not just receive help for every little thing. And it kind of made me want to pursue pediatrics a little bit more. And then the next class I went to was a biochemistry class, and the main focus of that class that day was lectins, which is a protein that binds carbohydrates together. And I'm sure that a lot of you haven't seen this crazy looking thing on the screen, but it also taught me that if I really want to pursue medicine, I do have to take classes like biochemistry and organic chemistry and learn all this stuff that's so deep inside your body cells that you can't even think to imagine that all that stuff happens in your body at the same time just to make you function. So earlier I mentioned that Dr. Robert Minkus became my mentor. He went to the University of Miami for his undergrad, to Tulane for med school, Washington University for his residency, and then did his fellowship at St. Louis Children's Hospital. He's currently the medical director at Children's Medical Center of Plano. So he has a lot of administrative duties, as well as he is a general pediatric surgeon. He also does run his clinic for post-operative follow-ups and people that need the opinion of a surgeon. So as soon as I had left the interview, I knew that this was definitely the person that I wanted to go farther with and study under because he'd have the greatest variety in his field, and he was definitely someone that you could tell would be a good teacher. And also, Children's is just such an amazing hospital. The staff over there is amazing, so I'm definitely glad that I went with him for a mentor. So with my first mentor visit, I wanted to know how can I help patients, and like I said earlier, teenagers are kind of limited in the medical field because there's not too much that they can do, but I wanted to know how I could make a product that had a real benefit to society. So going into it, I had no idea what to do, and on my first mentor visit, Dr. Minkus suggested that I go farther into surgery safety to help promote patient safety and reduce surgical errors in the field because there are so many. So I decided with him that I would make an informational app or website to help patients reduce surgical errors by improving their experience by doing as much as they could to not forget certain things or to not leave things out. So it's really about what can I do that will help the patients do more so that they have a safer experience. So I decided that through research and observation, I would do this. So like I said, through research and observation, this would get done. So I decided to use online sources, and as well, along with that, Dr. Minkus gave me tons of articles as I did more and more visits. So this was a really big help because as I got more and more articles, my research became a lot more specific to general surgery, which I really liked because I had no idea where to start at the beginning. And now I had all these great sources, and it taught me a lot about what I was actually going to see in the OR once I started. So at this point, I was still trying to get my ID for children's, which I had to go through volunteer services for, so it did take a couple weeks, so I didn't start shadowing until a little bit later. So until then, I decided to just keep on going with research and the articles that Dr. Mingus was giving me. So the first one talked about a checklist in medicine. So while it does sound so simple, and it's something that we all make just to help us in our everyday lives, it has impacted the medical world so significantly. The idea came from Dr. Peter Pronovost, who's a doctor at Johns Hopkins Medical Center. It was inspired by the aviation industry because there was a system where pilots had to check things off before they started going up in the air, and it actually reduced a lot of their errors when they were flying. So he took the same exact concept and put it in a hospital. Basically, he implemented it in their ICU at Johns Hopkins, and it made such a difference. He started with a checklist for catheterizing people, and they looked at the results, and it changed everything so significantly. The infections that were tied into catheter-related infections decreased so significantly, and on average, there are 80 surgical errors a week. And through this experiment, $1.3 billion in costs were saved because as it started to work in Johns Hopkins, he spread it to different hospitals in Michigan and all over the U.S. And it just had such a big impact. And it was just amazing to see that something that's so simple as a checklist can have such a big impact in such a complicated field. So this kind of led me to my original work. I wanted to get involved with checklists. So Dr. Mingus suggested that I started with something, the most basic important thing, which is hand hygiene. So I made checklists for how to scrub into the operating room, and how to gown and glove, and what surgical attire is required in the operating room, because I figured if I was going to promote patient safety, you have to start with surgical safety. So you have to know going into it what the surgeons have to do for their part to reduce errors and stuff like that. And I also did a research introduction for my final product. So at this point, as soon as I finished that is basically around the time that my ID came in, so then I was able to start shadowing, and eventually I got to my first surgeries. And the first thing that they do in the operating room is they do a timeout, which is basically where everybody stops what they're doing, they introduce themselves, what everybody's role is, who the patient is, and why they're there, what operation is going to be done if they have any allergies. And this was a great way to see the implementation of the checklist in the OR, because it really does reduce errors, because you make sure that you're not operating on the wrong patient or the wrong surgical site, which does happen a lot. So this was amazing to see and be a part of. From there, I saw surgeries every week going on from that. So I saw 20 surgeries done by Dr. Minkus total. A lot of them I saw multiple surgeries of. A lot of them were hernia repairs and appendectomies and mass removals, but it was just so interesting to be able to be a part of something that was so much bigger than me and see something that I might want to pursue later in my life. So I can without a doubt say that going in and watching these surgeries was the best part of my week every single week. I absolutely loved being in the OR, and everybody in there was so nice and supportive, and I found that I wasn't just learning from my mentor, but I was learning from everybody that was in there, because really all the techs and the nurses and the anesthesiologists have so much to teach. So I'm just going to touch on a few of the surgeries that I really found interesting. So the first one I saw was a laparoscopic fundoplication, which I know are a lot of really big words that I'm sure half of you have never even heard of before. Basically what they do, it's basically to prevent reflux problems. So this was a surgery in a child, and what they do is they take the bottom of the esophagus and the top of the stomach, which is right here, and they wrap the stomach around the esophagus. And these are the actual pictures from the surgery that I got to see, because I did get to keep pictures of the laparoscopic surgeries. Obviously for confidentiality reasons, we cut their names out. But this was the actual procedure scene, which it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but if you can see right there, that is the top of the stomach wrapped around the bottom of the esophagus. So seeing this in my first surgery was definitely something that was so crazy, because I'd never even imagined that there were things that were done like this, and it was just insane to see that someone can do this all inside the body without having to make any external external cuts except for to put the laparoscopes in, so that was really interesting. I saw a couple laparoscopic appendectomies, 3 to be exact. So this one is a really good picture because if you can see right there, that's the appendix, and it's huge because they're not normally that big. So you can see it's very inflamed right there, and what they do is they put stitches right there, and then right there they cut in the middle and take it out and bag it once it's inside the body. So that was really cool to see, and this was actually a more recent one. Going into this case, it was actually kind of interesting because they didn't know they were going to be doing an appendectomy when they did it. It was just a laparoscopic biopsy, basically, for lack of a better term. And going into it, they saw that the appendix, which is hard to see in the sliding, but it's kind of looking purplish, and it was causing this girl a lot of pain. It was a little bit inflamed, so they ended up just taking it out. The next surgery I'm going to talk about is the laparoscopic inguinal hernia repair. So I also saw 3 of these. It's basically more towards the groin area right here, as you can see. If you can see right here, there's a hole, which is basically what a hernia is. A hernia is a hole in the muscle, and this can be a lot of times they're harmless, but it can be a big risk because like in males, the testes can come up through the hole and organs can come up through it and disrupt things. So this was the hole, and what they do is they put a stitch in from the outside right here at the top, and they put it in right there, and they loop it around, and they close it up. So if you look right here, it's closed up. So that's basically what they do. And this case in particular was very interesting because inside the hernia there was actually another hernia, which is this hole right here, but since nothing was obstructing it or coming in the way, they decided to leave that one alone. So they closed this external one right here and left the one on the inside. Definitely my favorite procedure to see was the Nuss procedure. I saw it over spring break, and it was definitely the biggest procedure that I'd seen because all the surgeries that I saw involved really small cuts and basically fixing internal problems, but the Nuss procedure is very interesting because it's basically to fix a case called pectus excavatum, which is a condition in which the chest wall is deformed. So the sternum actually sits lower in your chest, pushing on the heart, which can obstruct your breathing and cause certain problems. So this was the actual case that I saw also. It was on a 17-year-old male. You can see right here, this is actually a shaper. What they do is they take a metal bar and they put it inside the chest, and they put it under the sternum to lift it up off the heart, and they bolt it in place on this side and the other side right here. So this is a shaper, and they basically just shape this out to mold the metal rod to this exact shape. So you can see how big the divot in his chest is right here, and before and after, how much it changed by putting this bar in. So this is actually a video of the surgery, not done by my mentor.
And welcome to this video on the Nuss procedure. My name is Joel Dunning.
Just going to skip ahead.
Patients who get permission to look at the video.
Also, if you have a weak stomach, you should probably look away.
Marking intercostal spaces where we intend to place the bars.
So this is the shaper that they're putting in.
Device. We can bend this very easily with our hands just to get the right bend.
And that's the machine they use to shape the metal bar that will eventually go into the chest.
The 11-inch bar is bent into its initial shape using the on-table bending device. And then we do a final check on the patients. We also put in place a dot at the end of each side, which marks where our skin incisions are going to be, showing that they're in the perfect position. This is the first incision on the right-hand side of the patient. It's superficial to the muscle, so as Peter regards just making a pocket outside of the muscle. If you were to go under the pectoral muscles above the nipple, you'd go under the pectoral muscles. This is the insertion device. This is placed through the intercostal.
So this is not the actual bar, but they put in this bar to basically carve out the space that the bar will go into to make it a lot easier.
He's pushing it gently around the sternum. Underneath. Just out of shot. And it's actually feeling, which I can see there, just feeling the other end of the introducer. And feels there's an correct intercostal space, it just pushes that blood down. And it's very important to actually lift up here so that you don't strip the intercostal muscle off on this side. It's an important point part of which is molded in the chest. And the tape's just brought through. The pre-bent bar, this is the implant, it's placed in the chest. Just put it upside down, and then using the device. I just bend this a little bit just to get that perfect. It's easy to do this before it's flipped. And we take the flip out and just simply turn it out. And you can already see that the impact is excellent. It's improved greatly. And this patient.
So that's basically what they did. Obviously, it was crazy to see this in person. It was the biggest surgery I'd seen at this point. They had 2 surgeons on each side, actually, my mentor, Dr. Binkett, and another surgeon. So just to see how much effort and strength it took to actually push the bar through was insane. And I really like seeing this because you could see the direct result of the surgery, because you can see the change in before and after. Like, the divot is so much smaller over here, and you can tell that the sternum has been pushed up. So it was amazing to see this, and I was definitely so lucky to be able to go in during spring break and witness this. And this is actually the internal picture. So this is the bar under this. This is the sternum right here that it's pushing up, and the heart is down here. And it's just amazing because once they put it in there, you see the heart kind of fill up a little bit more and start beating better, and everything just improves immediately. And this is not the actual x-ray from the case that I saw, but it just went off the internet to give you a good idea of what it looks like once it's in there. So that's how it's wrapped around. So actually that same week during spring break, I was able to go in and watch an afternoon clinic session, and I was really limited in seeing these because they are in the afternoon and I had ISM first period, so everything that I saw was mostly in the morning. But it was really nice to be able to see this clinic session because it was a lot more patient interaction than I had seen before, because before I was strictly just seeing surgeries and kind of seeing the patient come in, being knocked out, and they operate on them, and I really wanted to see something where the doctor is talking to the patient and the families. So that's what this was, and it was definitely a great experience because a lot of the patients that were in there had very young parents. They weren't sure what they should do, so it was definitely great to see this. The staff was amazing the entire time I was there. I met so many wonderful nurses and technicians and anesthesiologists, and also students, and like I said earlier, it's like I had more than one mentor because everybody there taught me stuff. Every chance that I got, I would try to talk to people that were new, and because everybody had something else to teach me about. So some of the people that really had a big impact on me were Angela Boone and a technician named Yancey. Yancey was actually there for most of the procedures that I saw, and he taught me all about how they prep for surgeries using the tools and what every single one needs and everything about that. And Angela told me a lot about the nursing side of it, along with nurses like another one named Shaw, and they were just amazing. So you could tell that it was definitely a learning environment, and also because it was a children's hospital, everyone tends to be nicer, so that was an added bonus. Other surgery scene, I remember one of my mentor visits, I was waiting for my mentor in the OR, and another surgeon came in to do a really quick procedure where he put in microscopic ear tubes into a kid's ear, so that was definitely cool to see such a small surgery. And then through health science too, like I mentioned earlier, I had clinical shifts, and some of them were in the OR. So I got to see a total hip replacement, a total knee replacement, and a pinky surgery. And these were absolutely huge for me because I hadn't seen surgeries as big as this except for the Nest procedure, which I had showed y'all before. Especially with the hip, because I had only seen incisions that were maybe a couple centimeters wide at the most, and I turned around for the hip replacement and there was a cut that was at least 6 inches down their entire hip, opening the whole thing up. And it was definitely the most violent procedure I'd seen also because they do hammer a lot and drill, and I also decided that day that I don't want to be an orthopedic surgeon when I grow up. But it was great to be able to see other fields and branch out, and this kind of made me realize that next year I also want to branch out and explore different fields because I won't know if I like it or not until I see it. And the pinky surgery was also very cool to see because it was just so small scale, and to see all the little components of a single finger is just amazing because there's so much more to everything than I thought. So As I was approaching the end of the year, I started my final product, which would be the informational app/website to help patients